Calling the African explorer.
Did someone call me Schnorrer?
Hooray, hooray, hooray.
He went into the jungle where all the monkeys throw nuts.
If I stay here, I'll go nuts.
Hooray, hooray, hooray.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 29 of the Faitheism Project podcast. My name is Alan Katz, and I have always been grateful to Hebrew School for making me the atheist I am today.
And I am Randy Lovejoy, and I am a pastor without a church, and we are glad that you are here with us today.
Yes, we are. Now, before we... Today's idea is two people, a desert island, and you. Now, a few podcasts back, we did this again. We put ourselves on a desert island, just us, 3 movies we love, and 1 book.
Yep.
And then we returned to the island and we chose 3 songs. In this podcast, we're going to go back to that same lovely bit of paradise. Now, here's the thought experiment when you get there. This is something that the whole family can play. As you picture the island, you're on it. Now, we don't know for how long. It could be forever. The good news, it's Eden. Every creature comfort is there except that annoying talking snake. Even better, you get to choose 2 people to share it with. Living or dead, it's a thought experiment after all. One exception, it can't be Jesus or any religious figure of that stature. That would be kind of cheating on the experiment. So I'm sorry, Randy, you're going to have to back to the drawing board. Aside from that, it is absolutely wide open. Now, remember, as part of the experiment, you will have to spend a considerable amount of time with these people. Ghengis Khan was probably a fascinating guy once you got to know him, but he might be a little too alpha male to share an island with. It might help to know a little bit about your island mates beyond what you already like about them. When the subject turns toward the more mundane, will you still be able to keep the conversation going? And don't forget, there will be 3 of you. The last thing you want on your blissful desert island is a triangle where 2 sides are always ganging up against the one. All right, so who would you choose? Who would be endlessly fascinating? But also, think about this. Who would be as interested in what you have to say as in them hearing what you have to say? Or in you hearing what them have to say? I'll figure that out. Whose unexplored depths would you love to explore given all that time? Now, before we set sail, there's a little bit of context.
Yeah, it was just a couple of weeks ago, I think now, but if you look, I know like in BBC or something else, there was a report about 3 people that had set sail from Cuba, had some problems with whatever boat or whatever they were in, and ended up on an island, just south of the U.S. I think it was something like 33 days that they were on this island, which was definitely not an Eden. That is different. It was an island where they lived. They said they lived off of coconuts, I think, an occasional rat, so I guess if you do rat with
apparently that's how one should enjoy rat occasionally.
Yeah, I think if you put a coconut sauce on anything, it's probably better, than it would be on its own. I think, but
we're not talking rat sushi. It's properly cooked.
That's true. Yeah, I'm sure they cooked it, but so these folks made it, and I think the people that rescued them said they had never seen people last that long on that kind of an island. But man, they are going to have a bond that will last the rest of their lives, even if they don't want to spend any more time together. So, there is context for this. It may or may not happen to you, but let's do this thing. I'm really fascinated to hear, Alan, who you would choose, the 2 other people that you would spend time with on your island. So, give us your first one.
My first thought was the professor, but then I thought, no, Marianne.
That's right. I actually saw the professor on an old Twilight Zone where he was yet again a professor But
Russell Johnson,
yeah.
typecast for life.
That's right. Yeah.
Poor Russell Johnson. And he did Gilligan before there was before anyone got residuals.
Oh, really?
He would have been a very wealthy man if he had gotten that deal during
That's
when
right.
residuals were in effect. I don't think any of the cast got residuals or much to speak of, if they got any.
Wow. Yeah. That's too bad. And did you know, this is a good trivia thing about Gilligan's Island. You can actually sing Gilligan's Island to the tune of Amazing Grace. Yeah. And vice versa. And also House of the Rising Sun. House of the Rising Sun works for those as well. So
we could end the whole podcast on that bombshell.
I mean, everybody has learned something already. We're just minutes into it and they've already learned. I mean, this is incredible. Really. So, okay. So who's your first person?
All right.
Who's your first?
I'll get this off my chest first. If I could really have someone, I'd have my dad. I'd love to have my dad back. Oh, that would be awesome.
Yep.
But I can't go there. So, how did I think about this? These are people who had to, that fascination, but there had to be a sense that there was plenty of meat on their bones. If I had something in common with them, that would be nice.
Yeah.
And as important, you have to feel like they might enjoy what you have to say. There could be some decent back and forth. One hopes. On my second one, I'm being hopeful that person would back. But and the first person, I think maybe I could. Well, you'll be the judge.
Well, plus remember, there's just going to be three of you on an island for an extended period of time. So at some point, they've got to listen.
Good mix. This is a good mix. This is. When I was a young lad growing up in Baltimore, at Channel 13 in the afternoons before the evening news began at 6, I think, from the 4 till 6, they had a movie block and they play old comedy movies from the 30s.
Okay.
And they played a lot of W.C. Fields, Joey Brown, and they played the Marx Brothers.
Okay. Yep.
And the first time that I ever encountered Groucho Marx, and he's the first Marx brother who appears in the movie Horse Feathers, he got me. He absolutely got me. Groucho Marx himself, that character that a guy named Julius Henry Marx played, Groucho, he could do anything to authority and authority could do nothing to hurt him. And that alone got me. In Horse Feathers, and we'll play a bit in a moment or two. In Horse Feathers, again, the plot of a Marx Brother movie is beside the point. It's really about what environment are they taking apart. And in Horse Feathers, it takes place on a college campus, and Groucho has just taken over running Huxley College. And the way that as a 10-year-old kid, when I first encountered this, first of all, the wordplay. Groucho was incredible with language, and the Marx Brothers were a fascinating team because you had Groucho, who was just, the wit was fast, it was quick, the wordplay was amazing, and it was incredibly clever and fast and terribly destructive toward authority.
Did they write the script? Did they improvise? Did somebody else write the material? Do you know? I'm just interested. I never thought of that.
Oh, yes. Well, all right.
No, keep going. If I don't want to get you off where you were going to go.
I'll come back because yes, there were stories about, yes, there were writers and they had great writers working for them. Although among the writers, they were George S. Kaufman, who was a great writer, American writer. He got a Pulitzer with Maury Riskin for writing of Thee I Sing, which is a terrific musical. And both Maury Riskin and George S. Kaufman wrote for the Marx Brothers. I'll come back to these guys in a second.
Okay.
You had Harpo, of course, with his blonde, it was slightly blonde, reddish wig, and the innocence with which he could take apart authority.
Yeah.
And authority could not put a glove on him. Was fantastic. And then there was Chico, who, with the terrible Italian accent, but there was something so, it was hilarious corruption. Hilarious corruption. And there was something, so they touched a thing. What they were attacking always was power, and they were always laying it to waste. I'll tell the one writer story, and then I'll show the beginning of Horse Feathers, the thing that just got me. When they started in vaudeville in the 1910s, and then by the early 1920s, they started on Broadway, first in a show called The Coconuts, and then that was very successful. They wanted to do another show, and there was ultimately was a show called Animal Crackers. And they wanted to get some writers were brought into them. What George S. Kaufman was leery of when he was brought in to write part of Animal Crackers was the fact that these guys improvised. Groucho really, yes, he did. He was, you start with the script, and why would a writer want to write for guys who are never going to say a word that they write? Why would you want to do that? And so George S. Kaufman was understandably, leery, and yet working with them, challenging as it was very rewarding. And he worked with them for a bunch of years and on a bunch of different projects. There's a very famous story about Animal Crackers while it's on Broadway, and Kaufman is standing backstage, and someone is trying to have a conversation with him, and they realize that Kaufman's not paying attention. Kaufman says, "Wait a second, I think I just heard one of the original lines."
That's awesome. Yeah. So
yeah, anyway,
I'm excited. They actually stuck with the script for one line, right?
But it's that wit, and that was really attractive, and
yeah,
being a class clown by nature, that was rather encouraging. It suddenly you could these were A class clowns on steroids.
Yep.
All right. So there's this.
Dear Professor, I'm sure the students would appreciate a brief outline of your plans for the future. What? I said the students would appreciate a brief outline of your plans for the future.
You just said that. That's the trouble around here. Talk, talk, talk. Oh, sometimes I think I must go mad. Where will it all end? What is it getting you? Why don't you go home to your wife? I'll tell you what, I'll go home to your wife, and outside of the improvements, you'll never know the difference. Pull over to the side of the road there and let me see your marriage license.
President Wagstaff, now that you have stepped into my shoes...
Oh, is that what I stepped in? I wondered what it was. If these are your shoes, the least you could do is have them cleaned.
The trustees have a few suggestions they would like to submit to you.
I think you know what the trustees can do with their suggestions. I don't know what they have to say. It makes no difference anyway. Whatever it is, I'm against it. No matter what it is or who commenced it, I'm against it. Your proposition may be good, but let's have one thing understood. Whatever it is, I'm against it. And even when you've changed it or condensed it, I'm against it. I'm opposed to it. On general principles, I'm opposed to it.
He's opposed to it. In fact, indeed, he's opposed to it.
So that's the first thing that I ever saw of Groucho. Was really that first couple of minutes. I'm a 10-year-old kid sitting down, and I'm seeing an adult take apart other adults just like that. And I found that really, really empowering.
Well, I mean, and in that, like, it seems like that should be one of the things that comedy can do.
Oh,
and it can allow you to even laugh at yourself or to laugh at your, how things work in the world or whatever,
That is the key. The tell of anyone who does that, you can tell that they don't have a sense of humor. It's, can they laugh at themselves?
Yeah, that's right.
If you cannot laugh at yourself, then you don't have a sense of humor. And hey, when you laugh, you tend to laugh at other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bullies never have a sense of humor because they cannot laugh at themselves. Otherwise they wouldn't be bullies. And so it's a big tell. And bullies are laughing all the time. They ain't laughing with anybody. It's always at somebody. And at someone else's pain, suffering.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the Marx Brothers were always laughing at themselves. Groucho was always, the subject of his own jokes.
Yeah.
And the more that I got to know Groucho, there's one of the sayings that he is very famous for creating. I would not want to be a member of any club that would have me as a member. Something that he very famously said. And I know, gosh, do I know how he feels.
Yeah, and I mean that's a perfect quote for this. The point that you're making is he's making you laugh. He's doing comedy, but he's not doing it from on high. He's right in the middle of what he's making fun of.
There's a routine that occurs a few scenes later on. Huxley has a terrible football team. And he's trying to score a couple of football players that he's told hang out in a nearby speakeasy.
Yeah.
So Groucho goes to the speakeasy to try to find some football players. Working at the speakeasy is Chico. And Chico is working the door. He's the one who has to, in order to come into the speakeasy, you got to know the password. And it's a very famous routine. This happens, I think, maybe after the next commercial break. As I'm watching as a 10-year-old, I see this scene.
Swordfish is the password. Do you understand?
Okay, I got it.
Well, what is it?
Password.
Swordfish! Swordfish!
Right, the swordfish. Piazza muscles in the room full of faccia dosi pazzi. Who are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Who are you?
I'm fine too, but you can't come in unless you give the password.
Oh, what is the password?
Oh, no, you gotta tell me. Hey, I tell what I do, I give you 3 guesses. It's the name of a fish.
Is it Mary?
Ha ha! That's no fish.
She isn't. Well, she drinks like one. Let me see. Is it sturgeon?
Hey, you crazy. Sturgeon, he's a doctor who cuts you open when you're sick. Now, I give you one more chance.
I got it. Haddock.
That's funny. I got a haddock, too.
What do you take for a haddock?
Well, now, sometimes I take aspirin, or sometimes I take a calomel.
Say, I'd walk a mile for a calomel.
You mean chocolate calomel. I like that, too, but you know, guess it. Hey, what's the matter? You don't understand English? You can't come in here unless you say swordfish. Now, I give you one more guess.
Swordfish. I think I got it. Is it swordfish?
That's it. You guess it.
Pretty good, huh?
Fine. You guess it.
What do you want?
I want to come in.
What's the password?
Oh, you're no fool of me. Swordfish.
No, I got tired of that. I changed it.
What's the password now?
See, I forgot it. I better come outside with you.
The quickness of it and the back and forth, the jokes are flying so fast. It's impressionistic comedy. Mm-hmm. It's ... There's not even set up punchline. It's so fast. Yeah. Who knew that comedy could be this agile and athletic and muscular and smart above all. And that was one of the things that really, there was a lot of low comedy in the Marx Brothers, but Groucho, it was literate, incredibly literate. And look who he had writing for him. He had some really, George S. Kaufman, Roy Reiskin, S.J. Perlman, another great, really American writer in the early part of the 20th century.
Wow.
And Julius, when he was not being Groucho, a fairly quiet guy. Did not have any kind of formal education whatsoever. These guys grew up in Yorkville, the Upper East Side of Manhattan, But it was a rough and tumble time in the beginning of the 20th century, and their parents, well, they were all immigrants from Germany. Most of the family, they weren't born here, and I think most of them never graduated from elementary school. They all went to work to support the family, and they all had a stage mom named Minnie. And Minnie Marks, she got her whole family on stage. And the rest, of course, is history. But, Groucho became a reader, even though he didn't have a formal education. He was an avid reader all his life. And later in life, as he became known and he could have any friend in the world that he wanted, he gravitated towards literate people, writers. He was very, very friendly with, there was a circle of intellectuals and writers in New York called the Algonquin Round Table. People like Dorothy Parker and Alex Wolcott and all the names escape me, but these were some of the smartest, cleverest people writing at the time, and Harpo also was part of. They hung together, but Groucho also. These were, and that's the interesting thing. Their lack of education did not hold them back from going wherever they wanted. Different time and place than where we are now, but something about it, about where they came from and where they ended up.
Yeah, that's part of the whole story and part of the whole. So you'd kind of like to have one of those circles on your desert, on your island, basically, is form one of those circles. Like
Algonquin. Well, hopefully this will have a mini Algonquin roundtable with the additional person.
Yeah,
I'll finish this with a little piece of home video that Julius shot, and it's outside his house in Beverly Hills. As you'll see in it, it's just him, his wife, his daughters as they go off, and then he it's a minute of just silent. There's some music that's been laid in, but it's fascinating because you actually can see a little bit of him, Julius, the actor. Julius. What's also interesting from the point of view of people who live in Los Angeles is that it's Beverly Hills in 1930s, and there's not a whole lot there. And watching him skip down his driveway, and you see not much
you're like,
there.
Wait a minute,
Whoa, that actually is the coolest part. I bet. The Groucho stuff is okay, but it's seeing LA in the 1930s. So that's my first.
All right,
the island.
That's good.
Who is your first island partner?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as I thought about it, it was funny because I thought of a number of names first, but then I was like, you know what? These are people I admire, and my concern would be that once I was with them on a desert island or an island, I might learn that I didn't like them as much as I want to like them. So I was like, all right, I need to think about some character qualities that would be key to that experience that would help it out. So, so as I thought about that, like, who would I want to be kind of stuck with? It's like, well, they would have to have some smarts. They definitely have to have some humor, some wit. It'd be great if they had a common faith, just because we're going to be going through a difficult withdrawal while we're there.
You want to be reading from the same prayer book.
That's right. And they clearly have to be adaptable, because if we don't adapt to where we are, it's not going to be good. So
I will take no offense that this is not me who you're talking about.
Well, yeah, but I think you've definitely. I think we would do fine. I actually think we would do okay.
I
have no problem. No problem with that at all. I think that.
Well, now that we got that out of the way.
That's right.
Carry on.
That's right. But so the first one that as I thought about it was a guy named that kind of encompasses some of that, is a guy named G.K. Chesterton, which I've mentioned him before.
Sure.
But
the Father Brown mysteries. He
Father Brown mysteries. Yeah. And
lovely writer. Lovely.
Yeah. And he writes with some real depth and wit that
He does.
So I just, for example, one of his essays, he was a journalist. He was a literary critic.
Yeah.
He did all sorts of stuff, but he's got this.
That's a great choice, Randy. I that's a great choice. I might have to creep over onto your island for.
That's right. No, I mean, I'd love to hang out with this guy. So he's got one of his essays is entitled "Cheese," which right there, he's got me right there. Then I just got to read you like the first part of this because it's just hilarious and it shows how he writes. He says, "My forthcoming work in 5 volumes, The Neglect of Cheese in European Literature, is a work of such unprecedented and laborious detail that it is doubtful if I shall live to finish it. Some overflowings from such a fountain of information may therefore be permitted to sprinkle these pages. I cannot yet wholly explain the neglect to which I refer. Poets have been mysteriously silent on the subject of cheese. Virgil, if I remember right, refers to it several times, but with too much Roman restraint. He does not let himself go on cheese. The only other poet I can think of just now who seems to have had some sensibility on the point was the nameless author of the nursery rhyme, which says, 'If all the trees were bread and cheese,' which is indeed a rich and gigantic vision of the higher gluttony. If all the trees were bread and cheese, there would be considerable deforestation in any part of England where I was living. Wild and wide woodlands would reel and fade before me as rapidly as they ran after Orpheus. Except Virgil and this anonymous rhymer, I can recall no verse about cheese." So that's just the beginning of his essay. But you get the humor, the tongue-in-cheek, the wit. When he's talking about Virgil, it's because he knows Virgil. He's not messing around. He's not just throwing that in to sound smart. It's because he is. So this is one of 4,000 essays that he wrote in his time. And he was literary and social critic. He was an historian. One of his books is a short history of Britain. He is a playwright, a novelist, a Catholic theologian, an apologist, a debater, a mystery writer. So like in this one book that's, loved the title of it, a series of essays, it's called In Defense of Sanity, which again, just cracks me up. I mean, it's just, but he has some other titles.
It could use a little defending, frankly.
That's true. But he has some other titles. He has A Defense of Skeletons is one of his essays. Another one is called A Piece of Chalk. And one other one, which I think is one of the best titles of an essay that I've ever seen, is What I Found in My Pocket. And it's
that's a cool idea for an essay. Actually, that's a great beginning point,
isn't it? I mean, to me, it's just some brilliant stuff. So he wrote around 80 books, several hundred poems, 200 short stories, several plays, 4,000 essays, which were mostly newspaper columns. He wrote a biography of William Blake, which is the best and most interesting biography I've ever written. And I'm just going to tell you, I'll just give you a quote of how that biography of William Blake begins. He says, "William Blake would be the first to understand that the biography of anybody should really begin with the words, 'In the beginning, God created heaven and earth.' If we were telling the story of Mr. Jones of Kentish Town, we should need all the centuries to explain it." So like, that's the start of a biography. And you're just like, okay, this guy is.
He's got an interesting way of seeing the world that, yes, right off the bat, you're not going to be getting your average view of a life.
Not at all. And it was interesting because it was like at age 21 that he wrote his first, critical piece of some literary work. And
how long did Chesterton live? How old was he when?
I don't know how old he.
I ask only because when you consider the output when he was doing in the 1910s, 20s, 30s.
That's right.
Is when he's productive. Yep. And when you think of that amount of output, he's doing it. Now with a computer, it's easy to have to put out a lot of stuff. But revisions, you actually have to go and mark up a page.
Yeah, exactly.
Before you can turn it into your editors who are going to do it, you're going to literally multiple pieces of paper through the typewriter multiple times that you're retyping the damn thing.
That's the thing. I mean, that's the thing. The sheer amount of
He typed that output more than
Yeah.
once. He typed it multiple times. Is my point.
Yeah.
It's you don't just type it once and hand it to people. I don't know
that's
why
right.
we call it writing to begin with. We should just call it rewriting, because
Yes,
that's what it
exactly.
is.
Good word. Yeah, because I mean, I don't know if this guy came up with some of the ways he put sentences together in one try. I mean, even in 30 tries, it's amazing the way he puts stuff together in sentences, because it's just so interesting the way he writes it.
His sense of English was very elastic. He really
Yeah.
had you can feel his love for the language
That's right.
in
That's
every
right.
single sentence. He doesn't so much write the language as caress it.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the stories of when he was, when he was going to school in England, he fell in love with the look of Greek letters. I mean, so he actually writes about it in a way that you can tell this guy
Also
is
had
just-
a visual aesthetic on top
yeah.
of that. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, that's the deal. And then I'll show you. Here's a great picture of him. One of my favorite pictures of him. It kind of shows, it just fits. And is the reason alone that I'd want to hang out with this guy is this picture. Can you see that?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, it's like, of course I'd want to hang out with that guy. I mean, seriously. That's that. As I'm getting to know this guy more and more from his writings, he's just an amazing person, an unusual person, somebody that I'd really love to spend time with, and I'd love for just even an ounce of his writing ability to somehow pass over to me. Another one where, again, listen, if you listen to the way he's speaking, but it's also just the depth, but it's so this is an essay that he wrote on the book of Job.
Mm-hmm.
And I've read some commentaries on Job. I've read a lot, but those commentaries tend to be super scholastic, kind of laborious in their detail, and you just kind of lose interest. But this essay on Job is like it's better in what he does in like 5 pages than in like 100-page commentary on the book of Job. So
Sure.
here's one part of it. He just says, when you deal with any ancient artistic creation, do not suppose that it is anything against it that it grew gradually. The book of Job may have grown gradually, just as Westminster Abbey grew gradually.
Mm-hmm.
But the people who made the old folk poetry, like the people who made Westminster Abbey, did not attach that importance to the actual date and actual author. That importance is entirely the creation of the almost insane individualism of our modern times. I mean, it's just like he said so much in that little space that I think is so wise.
That's an interesting point he makes, that the need for authorship.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
I made this is a
Right.
modern creation.
Yeah. And he's trying to introduce this book of Job, this ancient piece of literature, to people, but he's trying to do it in a way that will help them think about it a bit differently than the way that you're kind of taught. Well, if I'm knowledgeable, what I need to do is recognize that there's a good chance that it was, Job didn't sit down and write this like in his desk after it happened, right? Which obviously not, but it's like, he's just trying to say, approach this thing for what it is and for the time that it was written, and really, don't hold against it that there's different theories about how it was put together, how it was constructed, which parts were here, which parts were there, when it was written. Don't lose the artistic creation that it is in all of those details. You don't have to ignore the details, but just don't lose what it has to offer. So again, it's just, there's so much wisdom in what he has to say. There's humor, there's insight,
Perspective.
Perspective, and it's, the last thing I'll say about him, because I could go on about him forever, but it's just like, he had, as he was growing up, he had a real
He'll like that if you're on an island together.
That's right. Exactly. But he had a real period where he called himself an agnostic. He just didn't know what he believed. and then things got very dark for him.
Yeah. That's the journey. Yeah,
exactly. And what's fascinating is he decided, all right, it's getting really dark here. He dabbled in the occult a little bit. He just knew things were starting to get out of whack in the way he was seeing the world. And so he kind of did his own little thought experiment. And he realized, and this is where it was like, oh man, he could be on this podcast. I mean, I wish we could have him on here, because he said, okay, I'm going to focus on the fact that I exist at all. And he said, now I'm going to compare that to nothingness, which is the alternative. I either exist or I don't exist. He said, and you know what? Compared to nothing, existence is amazing. And then that was kind of the seed that started to develop in his worldview. Sure. and in finding hope again, was just, it's pretty amazing that I exist at all. And it sort of sounded like the Bryson stuff that we've talked about in a way, but from a different angle.
Sure.
And then it grew to this. And this is one other thing he wrote that I thought you'd enjoy this too. He says, you say grace before meals, the prayer of that people call grace, saying grace. You say grace before meals. He says, all right, but I say grace before the concert and before the opera, and grace before the play and the pantomime, and grace before I open a book, and grace before sketching, painting, swimming, fencing, boxing, walking, playing, dancing, and grace before I dip the pen in the ink. And what he's trying to say, all of life, the whole of
why
existence.
just this? Why just before we eat? Isn't
That's
everything
right.
actually? If you celebrate all of life, and whether you celebrate it because God has put you here and you recognize this fact, or simply because you recognize the fact that you are here
at all. I mean, that you
suffering.
exist. I mean, just that we even get to experience existence today, and in everything. I love how he lists all the things, because then you start to think, oh yeah, this little thing and that little thing and that thing and that thing, and I think he was in his 20s. I'm pretty sure he was in his 20s when he wrote that. And it's just like, oh my gosh, this guy is just mind blowing. So I can only aspire to such heights in what he has seen, in his wit, his wisdom, his writing ability. But I would be happy to spend time with him on an island. And I just can't imagine, that it would ever get boring. I think our conversations for days, months, years would be fascinating, and it would be an honor to be with him.
Good God, no! It's not even a question that's you. You now a third. Now the only question is a third person. Where does it take this?
Yeah, that's right. So who would, if it was you and Groucho, you and Julian there hanging out?
Yeah.
Then who else would you add to the mix?
I think Julius would appreciate another mind.
Yes.
Someone with a sense of history, someone with a little bit in common, and someone with the same sense of resistance to authority, a willingness to look at authority and call it out for what it is.
Yeah. Yep.
The historian Barbara Tuchman. Now, she was not an academic historian in the regular sense, but she wrote with an academic's authority. She said herself not being an academic authority, which made her a lot more readable, frankly. And she always felt that not being the way that she came in, I'll give you a little thumbnail history of her. Jump into that. She wrote terrific histories like A Distant Mirror about the calamitous 14th century, a great story about the century during which the Black Death, the Black Plague took place, rather relevant to our times. She wrote an amazing trilogy of histories about the First World War. The Guns of August won the Pulitzer Prize.
That's the one I think I've read. Yeah.
And now we'll talk about that. That epitomizes her sense of history and how to tell the story of these people. She wrote about China, a terrific book called Stilwell and the American Experience in China, about an American commander named Vinegar Joe Stilwell, who he wanted us to back the communists.
Okay.
He wanted us to back Mao. He said
Okay.
that's where we should go, and we instead followed Chiang Kai-shek, and we we went down a rabbit hole that we did not have, that we should not have gone down, and we were getting great advice on the ground. But again, this is the kind of history that Barbara Tuchman takes.
Yep.
That she tells. It's the history just off to the side that reveals so much more.
I mean, and isn't that often the case? I mean, what I've found with history is the story itself that's told, usually of the people in power, the people that were able to get their ideas known and all of that, that's one history. But there's another history off to the side of that, or underneath that, or however you want to think about it, that's usually the more interesting story anyway. So.
The last book of hers that I'll talk about is one that you would love, and it's one that would epitomize. It goes right to the thrust of your feeling about politics.
Okay.
In particular. Yeah, we'll get there.
Okay.
What first attracted me to Barbara Tuchman, and she grew up. She was born. Her birth name was Barbara Wertheim. She was born January 30th, 1912. She was the daughter of a banker named Maurice Wertheim, whose first wife was Alma Morgenthau. Her father, Maurice Wertheim, was a wealthy guy, wealth and prestige. He was the owner of The Nation magazine, which is still published today and a very respected magazine. He started The Nation magazine, and he was the president of the American Jewish Congress.
Wow.
That's significant.
Yep.
He also was a co-founder of the Theater Guild in New York. I mean, she came from people. Her mother was the daughter of Henry Morgenthau, Woodrow Wilson's ambassador to the Ottoman Empire.
So she had close connections to power.
There's a funny story in part of her World War I trilogy. She was born, what did I say, 1912. And she, as an infant, she was on board a ship that was part of one of the stories she tells about what happened in the lead up to World War I.
Oh, wow.
She describes the ambassador to the Ottoman Empire and his two daughters. And his being on the, his two granddaughters being on the boat. She is referring to herself.
Wow.
I mean, she's been part of history in a way, and yet she has this remarkable talent for telling histories, and it's perspective in the way that Chesterton had really remarkable perspective. And the more perspective you bring, it's strange in a way, the further you can pull the camera back, sometimes you pick up the most amazing nuances.
Yeah, that's good.
Pulled the camera back, or you appreciate the details that you're seeing with the perspective in which perhaps you should enjoy them. She opened my eyes that I was always fascinated by the Black Death, by the bubonic plague. Something about that subject just fascinated me. The Middle Ages always fascinated me. I don't know why. I couldn't tell you, but it always did. And the first book real history that I plunged into was her book, A Distant Mirror, about the calamitous 14th century. And within this 100 or so year patch, the 1400s, you had the bubonic plague, but you also had the 100-Year War happening at the same time, wherein England was trying to take over France, and France was trying to take over England over the course of actually 120 years, actually, that it endures. So you had the 100-Year War, and you had the Papal Schism. You had that patch during which there was one pope in Rome and another pope in Avignon, France. Even the Catholic Church could not get along. This was one of the low points in Western civilization. Was the calamitous 14th century. And she tells the story so magnificently. What she does, and she describes in the intro her method. And she tells the story more or less from the point of view there's a character whose story she tells the best she possibly can, and he's our guide to what it was like to live in the calamitous 14th century, a French knight by the name of Enguerrand de Coucy.
Mm.
And there's just enough written about him that we know what life was like having to live through all those things. And again, she finds a real human being through which really, we go off in lots of different directions. There are so many fascinating characters. What really struck me when I read this in my 20s, as she describes the French and their national behavior, there's a character, Henri de Navarre, who he has his territories on the western coast above Bordeaux, and the 100-Year War goes back and forth through his territory again and again and again. And every time the English are winning, he's suddenly English, and every time the French are winning, suddenly he's as French can be. And in a way, that willingness, that I'll go this way, I'll go that way, is still part of that character of French. The French collaborated during the Second World War, an awful lot of them, Vichy France, with tremendous ease. What one could begin to see was these elements of a national character were woven into the fabric really early. You begin to see them, and you see the English in the different ways that they behave, and again, within this history of one century, you walk away with it's the perspective, a perspective that it's fascinating about then. It's remarkable how telling it is about now, and that's what makes a great history. In the Guns of August, it's about it's really about the first month of the First World War, as the Germans launched their attack and the French threw up resistance, and finally they halted them in the middle of the woods, and trench warfare began that lasted for the whole rest of the war. It really, the whole point, the course of the war was decided in the first 30 days, and everything else was just carnage. But she starts her story in 1910, 6 years before it all begins.
That was the year Chesterton wrote Cheese. So
in 1910,
to make the 1910. Anyway,
what was I saying?
So she started the story in 1910.
Oh, in 1910, the death of Edward VII. Was it Edward VII? I make sure I get the name right there. She starts off with the Edward. I think it's Edward VII. I might get this wrong. This is Queen Victoria's son, and in 1910, all the royalty of Europe shows up. You had 9 of the crowned royals of Europe show up for this funeral, and they're all standing there, and they're all more or less related by blood. In particular, and among them there is Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany, who is directly related to the English crown. Queen Victoria, her husband was German. And so, in fact, a lot of the George, a lot of the Hanovers, that whole family that was the English crown, they were Germans. Lord Louis Mountbatten changed the family's name. It wasn't Mountbatten; they were German. It was Battenberg. They changed the name from Battenberg to Mountbatten to Englishify themselves. They are a German family. And so, but this is part of the story that she tells. And you have this remarkable family reunion 6 years before the war starts. And it's an ugly family reunion, but that's what it is. What you understand is happening in World War I is the old empires are literally crashing and burning, crashing up against each other. And they've got nothing left in their tanks. It's the old world is being laid in the grave right alongside Edward. And as a way to tell a story, to set the stage, it's the perfect place to have begun it. because you understand the people. And
And
you
again, for
understand
her to figure that out as the place to start the story, it's just brilliant. You know, it's that's amazing. Yeah.
it goes to the thrust of one of the last books she wrote, which is the one that I think you would it
Yeah.
would go right
Yep.
right to your heart. It was called The March of Folly. And the book is about, and I'm quoting here, one of the most compelling paradoxes of history, the pursuit by governments of policies contrary to their own interests. It details 4 major instances of government folly in human history: the Trojans' decision to move the Greek horse into their city, the failure of the Renaissance popes to address the factors that would lead to the Protestant Reformation in the early 16th century, England's policies relating to American colonies under King George III, and the United States' mishandling of the conflict in Vietnam.
That'd be interesting.
About half the book is really Vietnam, but the others are shorter. But it's the folly. It's so much of history is not great men doing great things. It is not. It is the march of folly. It's us being lucky that we don't take ourselves completely down the toilet. Desperately in need of redemption.
I'll definitely have to check that out. That sounds like, I mean, both, I mean, that one and the Distant Mirror are ones I need to check out because I haven't read either one of those.
She's such a lovely writer. Now, I expect that a woman of this intellect with this background, and she's Jewish. Okay, so so I've turned the island culturally Jewish.
I think that's
all right. It might as well be, because otherwise, it might as well be that way. I think we'd all get along handsomely. Barbara Tuchman is funny. She's witty. She's erudite. She knows everybody, and so does Groucho. From my point of view, my God, these people could tell the most amazing stories.
That's right.
It's funny, among the people that Groucho knew, and I'll finish on this, was the writer George Bernard Shaw. You probably won't. Now, Shaw was among the greatest playwrights in the English language. He wrote the basis for My Fair Lady was Pygmalion, a George Bernard Shaw. Arms and the Man and Superman. Just amazing plays. One of my actors in Bordello of Blood. Oh, well, all right, let me go back. So Groucho hung with George Bernard Shaw. Wow. Yeah. One of my actors in Bordello of Blood was my friend Aubrey Morris, who I mentioned Aubrey before. He played the funeral director in Bordello of Blood. And Aubrey, early in his career, acted in a play by George Bernard Shaw that George Bernard Shaw came to, and was so pleased with Aubrey's performance that he took Aubrey out to dinner afterwards.
No way. Oh my God.
Clearly intent on more than just conversation with Aubrey. Aubrey did not tell me what happened between himself and George Bernard Shaw after dinner, but my friend Aubrey. So I feel a certain connection to these people. It's like the Kevin Bacon game, the seven degrees of Kevin Bacon, except I've got 7 degrees of George Bernard Shaw.
Yeah. Right.
Anyway, so who would fill out your island?
Yeah, well, I had to think about it and kind of go through things, and I just thought, you know what, if I'm going to be on an island with G.K. Chesterton, I need my wife Cheryl there as well. And I'm not.
You just got me in trouble, dude.
Well, I mean, I may get bonus points for this, but that's not why I did this. So just to explain why, part of it has to do with the fact that we first, our relationship started in Mexico City after she had finished. Right. She actually went to Stanford, and then after Stanford went to Mexico for 2 years. That alone caught my interest. It's like, all right, this is somebody who's really smart, but who's taking a different road than you would normally take. And so, we were both there working with different churches. And got interested in each other while we were there. And then, the confirmation, this is just because it relates to the theme, but I felt like the relationship was confirmed when I was on a island, actually, a real island. And I'll show you a picture. I hope this is big enough, but can you see the island there?
Yes, yes, yes.
So that is La Isla del Tigre. That's in the Golfo de Fonseca between, you've got Nicaragua, Honduras, and El Salvador all around. And I ended up being there for 3 months. I'll show you a quick picture
And,
of.
and what were you doing there for those 3 months?
Honestly, the missionaries that had been working there and had established a few churches had almost given up because it was a very tough island to live on. And what they had tried in many cases had
what made
failed
it tough to live on? What made it tough to live on?
They had cut down almost all of the trees on the island. And so it was extremely hot. Also, it wasn't connected to the mainland. So you had to take this kind of bus sort of, it's more like an SUV bus sort of thing, a long way to get to the water. Then you had to take a motorized dugout canoe to the island. But they, they just had not managed the island well over time, which there are reasons that are understandable for that. But when we'd walk there, most of the time, we'd journey around the island working with different churches that were there that were all struggling. But there was this one section where they hadn't cut the trees down. And as soon as we got to that section, the temperature dropped by like 30 degrees. It was like, oh, now I understand another reason trees matter so much is they cool things down, because it was just where they'd cut the trees down and sold the wood. It was, it would just kill you. So
how did that hole get in my foot? Oh, I shot it.
Yeah, exactly.
I shot that hole in my foot.
Exactly. And this was an island that it was still being fought over by El Salvador and Honduras, both claiming rights to the island. Most of the people on the island were El Salvadoran refugees. Because there was, at that time, there still is, but there was an awful lot of bad stuff going on there.
So sort of kind of God-forsaken?
It was a tough I mean, it was beautiful. I mean, I'll show you here's a picture, a more recent picture of actually an upgrade to the place where I was, the Hotel Playa Negra that was actually not there when I was there. I was on Playa Negra. That's where a house we were staying in was. So that was our home base. Mm-hmm. But now there's apparently a hotel there, although it doesn't look, super. I don't think Hilton has anything to do with it. I'll just put it that way.
I don't think the Four Seasons is quaking in its boots.
No. So it was really while I was on that island that I really kind of figured out that this was the female for me.
And you were together there?
No, she was actually on the border. She was in a place called Don Lee that was on the border of.
So you had time to think. You had time to think and not much else to do.
Yeah, she was
very little in the way of creature comforts.
No, not at all. She was on the border of Honduras and Nicaragua, and this was while there was some stuff going on in terms of Nicaragua and the U.S. and a lot of countries. There was a lot of subterfuge going on, and as a matter of fact, the island I was on had a dormant volcano in the middle. And there was a U.S. listening post on top of that volcano. So on the bad days, because we basically ate bread and moldy bread usually and beans while I was there, I lost 20 pounds. But we would see these helicopters, these U.S. military helicopters going across the land up there. And I just knew they had Snicker bars and Coca-Cola, cold Cokes there.
They were eating just fine.
Every time it went by, I was like, man, if I didn't know better, I would climb that volcano.
Drop one out the door, man.
That's right.
You'll never
exactly.
miss it. Drop a pallet. You'll never miss it.
That's right. But she did visit me there once. She did get a visit because the woman who was kind of in charge of things, knew we were interested in each other. So she had to come make sure my roommate and I were doing okay on the island. So Cheryl went with them, and they visited
How long did it
us.
take to get to where you were from where she was?
Oh, it took like hours and hours. Yeah, it wasn't a simple journey at all. Because she had to go to Tegucigalpa, the capital, meet this other person, and then they had to go from there out to a place called Choluteca, and that's where you caught the kind of combi, they called it, that would take you to the place where you could get the dugout that you could then drive into so anyway, but once she got there, the people there was this woman that would cook food for us while we were there. So she decided to make a special meal since she heard that these other two were coming. So we sat to eat, and we got this bowl of rice and meat that looked like chicken. And then Cheryl's eating it, and she eats one piece, and she looks at the bone, and she's like, what animal is this? A chicken does not have a bone like this, because it had this really weird shape to it, right? And I said, well, all right, you really want to know? And she's like, yeah. I said, well, the son of the family killed this iguana with his slingshot, and we're having iguana because usually we just have beans, or on occasion we'll get some fish, but usually 2 or 3 days prior, we see the fish up on a post drying with flies all over it. And actually, I asked a woman who worked in the canning industry as a biologist later, I'm like, why didn't we die when we ate that? Because it was like up there with flies all over it. And she said, well, was it salted? And I said, yeah, it was. She said, well, the salt kills the maggots, so you were fine. They were just drying
Look on
it
the
out
bright
and then
side.
put it in soup. And I was like, okay, so that's why I survived that one. So, but the fact that, Cheryl ate the iguana and then got really sick for the next 2 days. But again, that there's a Stanford grad who grew up in Glendora, California, who is like willing to come do all of this.
Game, man.
It's like this person's got my attention. She is not following the normal path. So,
No.
I'll just tell you 2 other stories about her that really what caught my attention. One is one of her roommate on the border of Nicaragua was a woman who had graduated from Oral Roberts University, had an awesome Texas accent. She still does. But the reason she really liked her roommate was because of this story. Because she was very well kept. She ended up being a Delta Airlines stewardess after this. But the story she told was that somebody set her up on a blind date at Oral Roberts University. And what she decided to do was to...
blind man. That's already a problematic story, but carry on.
But what she decided to do was to put a pillow up under her shirt and open the door to this blind date at Oral Roberts University as if she was pregnant and see how the guy would respond. And for Cheryl, it was like, okay, she's my friend right there. So she likes people that you'd meet them and think one thing, but then as you get to know them, there's kind of this quirky factor that draws her in, and that is a key way that she makes friends. So that was something else that attracted me to her. And then one other thing was when I first got to know her in Mexico, because we were in Mexico before Honduras, she was actually living in an area called Netzacoyotl, which is outside of Mexico City.
Say that 3 times.
And yeah, that's right. And I'm going to show you a photo, just a representative photo of the area, so you get a general idea. So here's Netza. See, that's the Netzacoyotl police, right? Which that's what happens. That community was a tough place, even at that time, even for many Mexicans that were living there.
Wait. Seeing that written on the side of the police car is hilarious.
Yeah,
it's like one of those long Welsh words with 50 letters and none of them are vowels.
Yeah, no, it goes back to the Mayan roots. It's a Mayan deal. And yeah, there it is.
If that's not going to make it as a TV show like Hawaii 5-0, that's just not going to cut it, guys.
You can see I was trying to think of like some of the ones that they've done in different cities, or like Netzacoyotl Crimes Unit or something.
Exactly.
It's like So, but while she was there at one point, they caught a burglar, and people came out en masse and beat the crud out of the guy. That was how justice was done. I'm sure
Yeah,
he was
sure.
not going to rob anything again. So it was a very tough area. And she would take public transport out to that area from where the offices of the organization we were working with. And one time she got in, and the door fell off of the van that they were in. And the guy said, okay, everybody get out. I can't go any further. You're going to have to find another ride, because the door just fell off. And another time, she actually had her pants were cut by someone using a razor blade to try to cut her purse and steal from her. But what she loved living there. She loved Mexico. And the house that she lived in Netza was with a family that had 6 kids. 5 of them were boys, and they had 1 bathroom and 2 bedrooms. And then they used one of the lounges and the laundry room as other bedrooms. And the mother had died. So it's just the dad and the 6 kids. And that was the Mexican family that she lived with. And when she heard that she was going to go to this Don Lee in Honduras, for the next part of her time there, she got really teary because she really loved this family, and it was hard for her to leave. And that was the other part of it. I thought, okay, if this Glendora, Stanford woman can fall in love with her Mexican blue collar family to the point that it really, it's hard for her to leave them, then that's somebody I want to know. That's somebody I want to be connected with. And that's what I've found with her over years of marriage, is that she's the glue that has held our family and our relationship together. Because, through my parents' divorce, I was kind of gun shy about marriage. I was like, well, my parents couldn't pull it off. Well, so how do I know I'm going to be able to pull it off? But when she commits to something, she commits. It's done. You don't rethink it. You're done. You have made the commitment. And that has just been massive for me, for my family. And then just on top of that, I think she would be great on this island because she loves mysteries. She's read every Agatha Christie probably at least twice, possibly 5 times.
That's a lot of mysteries.
So she would love to hang out with GK, who wrote the Father Brown mysteries. I don't think they'd have any problem hanging out together. And if she was there, then we would get through it one way or another. I know we would, no matter what came our way. So she's definitely somebody I would, and she'd be able to handle the adventure, because I've already seen her handle, Nicaragua, or right on the border of Nicaragua and Honduras, and Mexico City and Netza. And then since then, we've gone to Mozambique, which right after it was ending 40 years of civil war. And she thrived there as well. And it's like, all right, she is somebody to take with me to this island. So there you go.
And through life.
Exactly. No, I mean, it's just been, she's been a huge blessing. And I wasn't smart enough to know what I was looking for, before I got married, and even the things that
who of us is, especially a male of the species.
Exactly. I mean, I was not nearly smart enough to pull that off, but I am just thankful for her and for the grace that has been shown to me, because if I'd gotten married to somebody else that was as skittish about marriage as I was, it would have been a disaster. I mean, really, it would have been a disaster. So
it is
just
the trick, finding the right. It's really hard.
Big heart, adventure, commitment, smart, loves mysteries. I'd like that on the island.
Your island sounds fantastic. Like I said, I might have to sneak over and. Well,
I'm hoping we've got some transport between our islands, because I would definitely like to hang out with your folks as well. I mean, as it is, I'm going to go hang out with Barbara because I'm going to buy a book and read it and hang out with her that way. So I'm looking
She will
forward
not
to it.
disappoint you.
That's right. I don't have any doubt. The way you should actually get some kind of affiliate income for the way you've described your books, because anybody that listens to this, I think they're going to want to buy some of her books and read. So
I've got my eye on a piece of real estate I'm going to purchase.
There you go. I like that.
And all those affiliate dollars.
That's right. That's right. Very nice. Very nice. So, I feel like I've learned some more about you. I love the anti-authoritarian bent of this one and your descriptions, which it's been there under the surface in our conversations, but I feel like here it surfaced and in a way that makes me understand even you and your approach better. So this is awesome. As usual, we've come up with a way that people can interact with others and really go deeper and learn more about each other in a really useful way.
Oh gosh, and you end up talking about 1,000 other things, and suddenly,
that's right.
Well,
I like too that we've snuck in some books, because I think we both felt like one book wasn't enough, but we snuck them in.
Always trying to cheat a few books in. That was
that's right.
Well, A Distant Mirror. When we talked about the books, one of the books that I had to. No, another book was A Distant Mirror. Was one of the books that I go back. I've probably read it 3 times.
Yeah. Okay. I've got to check that out if you've read that 3 times. And I'm intrigued too by that period and the Black Death. And hey, at this point, anybody that's lived through this pandemic, it's like, why wouldn't you want to read about some other people that are struggling with some type of mass scale disease, so
with a lot less information.
Yeah. That's right.
And
that's right.
No sense of hope. What?
No.
And no way to treat it whatsoever. I mean,
That's right.
It wiped out in some places half to 2/3 of the population.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine that just kind of going through your village or your town and you're just helpless? It's like, I don't know if I'm going to get hit or not.
To stand on the other side of it after really the whole structure of society is gone because all the people that do it, and everyone that's left is shell shocked.
Yeah.
And desperately afraid of, and yet, well, as you'll read in the story, life went on. In fact, some people celebrated in the midst of all that because they celebrated the fact that while there was death all around them, they weren't. Yeah,
they survived. Just survival itself.
A strange cult of life formed in the middle of it. And it's the story of human endurance and human adaptation and human behavior. It's all meat for a writer,
That's right. Well, this has been great. Really enjoyed it.
As always, a lovely conversation. I as said last time, I feel like these relationships make me a better atheist.
Yep.
The more I know,
I am a better Christian because of our conversations. There is no doubt about it.
Yeah,
no doubt.
I feel like, we'll stop patting ourselves on the back. We'll start patting ourselves on the back some more next time.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, everybody.
Yes,
and
thanks, everybody.
We will see you again.
We will.
I cannot say I came to say I must be going. I'm glad I came, but just the same I must be going. La la.
For my sake, you must stay. If you should go away, you spoil this party. I am through.
I'll stay a week or 2. I'll stay the summer through. But I am telling you.